Whether it's Europe, the Middle East, Africa, or Latin America, states are currently entangled in conflicts in almost every part of the world, many of which have already escalated significantly. Even though we primarily hear about Ukraine or Israel, these are just a small fraction of all global conflicts. In fact, we hardly hear about most of these conflicts, even though they are often more intense than what is reported in the news. In this video, we want to provide insight into which conflicts are currently occurring, where in the world, and answer the question of whether we may already find ourselves in a new world war, or if peace can prevail on our planet. Let's start our video with the wars that are currently taking place and some good news, namely that fortunately, very few nations on our Earth are currently in a state of actual war. The most consequential war is likely the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. After the Russian army invaded Ukraine without warning on February 22nd of last year and caused countless casualties, the world is deeply disturbed by the fact that Russia, as a nuclear power, attacked a country that has been supported by NATO since then. If this were to escalate beyond Ukraine, for the first time, two superpowers from the East and West would face each other on the battlefield. In parallel, another war has been dividing the world into West and East for several weeks, namely the conflict in Israel. After the Hamas cruelly targeted several civilians in early October, the Israeli army seeks revenge and wants to destroy Hamas. To do this, Israel is again launching large-scale attacks on Gaza, a densely populated region where Hamas fighters and the Palestinian population are located. Many are concerned about the conflict, especially because other countries like Iran have threatened to intervene if Israel continues to target goals in Gaza. The consequences of such a confrontation in the region would likely be devastating. For example, if Iran were to attack Israel, it can be assumed that the USA would also intervene, as they already have aircraft carriers in the region. This, in turn, could lead to Russia, as an ally of Iran, getting involved. Although it doesn't currently look like such a confrontation is imminent, these regions are, in the truest sense of the word, powder kegs. But there are also other types of wars that are currently capturing the world's attention, including numerous civil wars, especially in Africa. Various groups of rebels, warlords, and military forces are currently fighting against each other between countries. One of the most intense civil wars worldwide is currently taking place in Sudan. The power struggle between two generals has completely escalated, leading to deadly clashes for months, mainly affecting the civilian population. Even though fortunately few civilians have been killed by weapons, the poor population of the country is threatened with a shortage of medicines, food, and even water supply, which could have devastating consequences for the desert state. But until recently, there was also a civil war in Yemen, where various Muslim rebel groups, each supported by the opposing superpowers Iran and Saudi Arabia, faced each other. This proxy war led to countless people fleeing or losing their lives since 2015. Currently, there is a ceasefire in Yemen, mediated by China, and the leaders of both countries have even met. For many, however, it is only a matter of time until the conflict reignites, perhaps even spreading throughout the region as part of the Israel conflict. But there are also other types of wars that cause no less suffering. For example, gang wars are a significant problem, especially in Latin America, and Mexico is particularly affected by these conflicts. In Mexico, fighting between numerous cartels for dominance in the drug trade, including the feared Jalisco Nueva cartel or the famous Sinaloa cartel of El Chapo and his sons, is a significant issue. Although El Chapo, who was long considered the world's biggest drug dealer, is currently in prison in the USA, his sons are in full control. Even when one of them was recently arrested, the police had to release him because his cartel threatened to level an entire city to the ground otherwise. The result of this war is an average of 94 murders per day throughout Mexico, solely attributable to conflicts between rival gangs. The USA has already declared some areas of Mexico as a war zone that must be avoided. But Ecuador and Venezuela also face at least as significant problems. Venezuela's capital, Caracas, is considered the world's most dangerous city, with a murder rate of 120 cases per 100,000 inhabitants per year. The state has completely lost control here, even to the extent that new criminals cannot be detained, and individual gangs control entire states in Ecuador. In the current presidential campaign in August 2023, a candidate was allegedly eliminated by a drug cartel, as these conflicts mean that governments have less and less control and can provide less security and stability abroad. However, there are also conflicts that are not openly fought but could escalate into a real war at any time. For example, Morocco and autonomous groups in Western Sahara are facing each other to claim gigantic desert regions for themselves. At the same time, Serbia repeatedly asserts claims to Kosovo, where mainly Albanian people live, who are deeply hostile to Serbia. Nevertheless, Serbia's president, who is a good friend of Vladimir Putin, regularly positions heavy military equipment on the border with Kosovo, and there are repeated minor skirmishes, unfortunately resulting in casualties. But Turkey and Greece also threaten each other with war, although both are in NATO. For this, they repeatedly penetrate each other's airspace due to unclearly defined islands in the Mediterranean that both nations claim. Two cold conflicts could, however, finally make the barrel overflow. Firstly, the disputes between India and China, where there have already been occasional clashes on the shared border. Both nuclear powers aim to be the dominant power in Asia and even the whole world in the long run. China has also been claiming the island of Taiwan for years, which declared itself independent after the Chinese Civil War in 1949. Since then, China has repeatedly threatened with a violent takeover of the island and has conducted dangerous maneuvers off the coast of Taiwan. This conflict is especially dangerous because the USA has announced military intervention if China invades Taiwan. This open conflict between the two most powerful countries in the world would likely lead to the Third World War, according to many experts. However, this is currently very unlikely because even though one can quickly become pessimistic about all the conflicts mentioned, there are also some positive signs, even if it's hard to believe. The overall number of global conflicts has not increased, but has actually decreased in recent years. Historically speaking, we are currently living in one of the most peaceful periods in recent history. Furthermore, there are three concrete reasons that clearly speak against a third world war. Firstly, the global economy is far too interconnected. Almost all nations trade with each other despite all differences and depend on each other and their prosperity. Especially China and the USA still need each other far too much, according to many experts, to have a serious interest in a war that would jeopardize their prosperity and long-term growth. A world war would be spoken of if multiple international great powers were openly in armed conflict with each other. Of all nuclear powers, only Russia is currently at war. Other superpowers like the USA, China, Great Britain, India, Japan, or Pakistan are theoretically at rest and do not seem to want to be actively involved in armed conflicts. Thirdly, mutual deterrence seems to work. Worldwide, the USA, Russia, China, France, Great Britain, India, Pakistan, Israel, and North Korea probably possess nuclear weapons. All these countries know that launching a single nuclear missile would trigger a chain reaction that would destroy the entire world, with no one emerging as a winner. Similar to the Cold War, mutual deterrence seems to have a significant effect and paradoxically creates a neutral state of peace. Despite all this news, wars and conflicts still seem to be widespread today, even though many experts believe a third world war is entirely unlikely. What is more likely is that the world is becoming increasingly divided, and some regions are distancing themselves from each other. Similar to the Cold War, many expect that in the future, many countries will align with the USA, while others will seek closeness to China and Russia. A bipolar world without a clear center of power seems definitely possible, which on the other hand, could mean that there might not be a direct confrontation on a global level. We'll see you next time here at MindLink. Take care.